All right, the next section is actually a panel we're going to have. This one's going to be about what you really need to do in order to attract money and things like that to your projects. We have Fabian Venter, who's going to cover some of the marketing and whatnot you need to do in order to message. We have Woodson, who's actually a VC with Sigma Partners. He is going to be speaking to what you need to do to prove to them and other VCs that you're actually a venture worth investing in. Sean Casey is with the Silicon Valley Space Center. They're actually an incubator for new space companies, and he's going to tell you what, from their point of view, you need to do in order to get their attention. And Thomas, are you going to join us today?
I can if you like.
Okay, McLaughlin is a, he advises new companies on how to get started and things like that. And he will tell you what, he's an advisor, he actually helps Team Phoenicia, among other things, on what to do to actually get your business case pulled together enough to talk to people with money. So I'd like the gentlemen, if you please, come up to the front. And I think each one I'm going to ask you to do about 5 minutes to talk about what you, 5 or 10 minutes to talk about what you expect. And then with a little bit of background about yourself and things like that. And then I really want you folks to be asking questions. The point of this is they can, whatever you think you need to know, these guys probably know it in terms of business and whatnot. So first up, actually, Thomas, would you go take the first step?
Sure. Okay.
Stand up.
My name is Thomas McLaughlin. I do consulting for startups, mostly in the strategy area. My background is mostly in marketing and technology. I kind of bridge the two. Spent most of my career. Early in my career, I did have a little bit of aerospace-related things. Interned at NASA Ames and was involved in some space projects, including with GCH Inc., Percheron Rocket, detonation propulsion systems, and I was also co-founder of Delta V Inc., which was the parent 501c3 organization which took the Viking Fund to raise money for the data collection and interpretation of the Viking information coming back from Mars. So recently, I've been getting back into the startup realm, helping companies determine their strategy needs and figuring out what's going on with their business. And so one of the basic questions is, what business are you in? So that's a standard business question. And most companies that I've seen, they really don't understand which business they're in. You know, for instance, if you want to just say what businesses do you think you're
transport. I mean, we take stuff to to a location.
Okay. Anybody else? Somebody saying what business you're in? You think you're in the launch business? You think you're in the transportation business? This particular panel is about raising money. So your customer in this particular case is somebody who's going to supply money to you. The question is, why are they going to supply money to you? So that's an entirely different business. That's a different customer. So you need to think about what this relationship is, what this transaction is, and what the particular values and costs are in that transaction. That's kind of the thing that I tend to look at in terms of helping companies think a little bit outside the box in terms of what business they're in.
Hi, my name's Sean Casey. I'm with the Silicon Valley Space Center, which is a 501c6 that we've started just within the last year, based out of the Hacker Dojo, which I don't know if people are familiar with. It's one of the hacker spaces here in the Bay Area. My own background is that my normal day job is as a senior scientist with University Space Research Association, working on the SOFIA program. I also have MBA from the Berkeley Columbia program too, and really just focused on small payloads and getting the message out about new space opportunities. The Silicon Valley Space Center, we get together once a month over at the dojo, provide opportunities for entrepreneurs to talk about what their ideas are and try and shape those ideas into what should be a credible business plan to pitch within the angel and incubator community here in Silicon Valley. So one of the things we're doing this year is focused on workshops exploring the uses of small payloads, whether it's for CubeSats or Cube Labs, and some of the technologies that are, can be integrated into those form factors. With regard to the nano launch program, I would emphasize that you need to talk about what the market is. You know, the discussion we have about 50 cubes or 3 cubes or 6 cubes. You know, all of those are little niches, and there's discussion on lead startups from Steve Blank, and maybe what we have to do here is kind of put forward a bunch of concepts and sort of see how those play out. There are some efforts that are going forward, like the QB50 program, which is a European effort to do 50 launches. If you talk to the guys at the Von Karman Institute, not only have they signed up enough for their 50, but they're actually thinking about a second a second launch too, to take advantage of the other people that couldn't fit within the 50 slots that they have. I just came back from the Kentucky CubeSat workshop, and that was held by Kentucky Space down in Lexington. And if you look at the meeting of who attended that workshop, you saw both industry people, educators, university profs. All of those are different segments of the market. So as you're thinking about what is my business, what business am I really in, you can also think about what segment of that market am I really going after. What does there's a bunch of high school kids. You have Bob Twiggs, who is a Stanford University professor who's now down at Morehead State University, teaching classes to high school students as part of their STEM program. Say, what is the market for interfacing with those high school students? What's the market for interfacing with university researchers? What's the market for interfacing with industry people? All of those can be different, and you might say, well, gee, this is what our pitch is. This is what the market we're going after. And so we have a bunch of different relationships. I mean, how do I reach that high school crowd? How do I reach that university crowd? How do I reach that industry crowd? So those are all things you can think about, and they're all perfectly valid approaches. And you can say, well, this is the market I want to go after, and as you're pitching it to a VC, you can have a very in-depth understanding. Your team can have an in-depth understanding about how are you going to reach those people, and what's the cost of reaching them. How often do you expect to fly, and that can kind of shape your whole program. So, but these are the things we like to talk about at Silicon Valley. What we call our Silicon Valley Space Center, and welcome any other comments that you guys may have.
I'm Wade Woodson. I'm with Sigma Partners. It's a local venture firm. I joined there in 1987. In that period, I've invested in a lot of different things. Probably what's most relevant, I think, to the things that are on your minds today was an investment I made in early 1993. I invested in a little company doing communication services. Turned out it was the first venture investment in the internet. It was one of the ISPs, it was PSINet. We got public. I think it was the second internet IPO. Went great. They collapsed later, year after having their name all over the Raven Stadium. Fortunately, I was long gone. Didn't have to be cleaning up that mess. But the reason I bring it up is it'll be relevant to the discussion of talking about, what turned out to be huge markets looked like at the time, and what made that market ready for investment at the time. Because, excuse me, in some ways it could have been kind of similar before it came out of government funding. And it came out of university work then with government funding. A few of the internet crazy people decided to go off and form commercial ventures. They struggled to get money, and then at some point, the stars began to align, and commercial money, guys like me, people who are in it for profit, come in and put some money in, and we see what happens. It turned out to be an enormous market. But back at the time, I'm not sure what people remember. And in '93, it was a joke, right? That was something that geeky people did when they were at college or they were in tech firms. And I looked into it because I thought, this is great. We're putting all this technology into it with networking within companies, how come the companies can't talk to each other? So that's why I started looking at it, but all the energy at the time and all the big companies, what people often forget, Microsoft and all these guys, they were all talking about 500 channels to your set-top at home, and that was going to be what connected everybody in proprietary everything, and the internet was seen as some weird Unix thing, right? But it's relevant because for you all, the world isn't that radically different from what the internet was like in sometime in the 70s. You know, and trying to, you know, nothing's a perfect match, but trying to line those up, you can get some lessons from that are some encouraging and some discouraging because of the amount of time it took. So I'm here because I gave Will a bit of funding for Team Phoenicia. That was something I did because I thought it sounded great. It was not a for-profit investment. That's another thing we can talk about some more as a potential opportunity for all you guys. Figuring out how to tap into people who are interested in what you're doing rather than saying, well, I'm going to do it to make a buck. I still think there's an opportunity for you in that regard. The venture community, I should comment on that, maybe a touch of background on what it is. The venture business in the United States is very well organized and established. At this point, 30, 40 years ago, it was a bunch of rich guys, you know, who sat around at lunch and tried to figure out where they put their money. Now it's not good at all. People put their careers into it, young people, older folks. It is very dollar driven. It's very much a for-profit enterprise. Our money comes from your retirement plans, from your dad's retirement plan in some state, from universities that you given, you know, they're hitting you up for money all the time. You know, it goes in their endowments and they turn around and give it to us. These people, you know, they have zero interest in us moving forward the state of the planet or saving the whales or anything. All they want is a return on investment. And that's the only reason that anyone in the venture capital business has a job. It's all about return of investment. So even though you'll find, talking to people in the venture business, they may find what you're doing is very interesting, and you could have a nice conversation with them, and a lot of them are pretty technical in their background, and that could be interesting. Remember that they're only there, I mean, they're only permitted to write checks if the point of it is to get a return on investment. They don't get to make contributions. As has been told many times, you know, venture capital is not an eleemosynary business. It's all totally for profit. And that'll be really relevant for you all as you assess your own industry as to when venture capital would be very interested in you. In general, if you look at when that is, it's usually after proof cases have already evolved that have made some real money for people. And, you know, the next question, of course, is, you know, the chicken and egg question is, well, where did that proof case come from? It's usually been either sweat equity, people who gutted it out when everyone else told them they were idiots, or luck. In my case, in the internet business, those guys, it's hard to believe now, they were profitable. It was a profitable business because it had to be. They were doing about $6 million a year and making money on it. Within 2 years, you know, everyone convinced everyone in the internet business, you know, the more money you lose, the more valuable you are. But at the time, the only reason that they got my money, because there wasn't any proof you could make a dime in that kind of a service, the only reason they got the money is they were profitable and they built something. And they had done it really in a very, you know, scrappy way. They had taken what was a not-for-profit business out of the New York State Education Network, gone for profit, put in tons of sweat equity, raised money from some family and friends who just believed in them, just, you know, despite thinking they were nuts, and built it up to where they could attract professional money. So that's a test case you can think about. I think that, well, we can talk some more about, you know, whatever you guys are interested in. The conversation you were just having about the contest, things like that can be useful in attracting interest. Maybe not at the venture stage yet, but at the prior stages. I think that just a perspective for you from outside your community. America, you know, we like winners. America likes winners. I think having a winner will be a big deal if you wanted to promote interest and attention and media frenzy and everything else, having a, you know, your first winner, your second winner, your third winner, you know, we're all winners, is maybe better within the community, but will not get you the kind of attention. So one of the key things, I think, and what I've heard just listening, is there are a lot of different objectives for your challenge. And one of the challenges, you know, I would think for you guys is figuring out which are the ones that matter. And if you again, there can be all sorts of other reasons for it, but in terms of bringing attention and money and some of those resources, being able to have some kind of ordering process from this is very useful. And the reason, of course, is that anyone from, because you know, we use this all the time, not winners, but wherever the equivalent is, when we look at a market we don't understand, it's very hard from someone on the outside to assess a market and then figure out who are the likely winners, who are the guys down here, because you want to, you know, anyone who's in this, you know, for more than just fun, even the people who are doing it for fun, I think they're going to want to have their money up here. You're looking for some kind of everyone is lazy enough, intellectually lazy enough, you're looking for some kind of third-party ordering mechanic. So I don't know, where your goal is and where you want to drive it, but for that kind of attention, and you just look at the media doesn't have any interest in first, second, third winners. You know, they don't want to know who's the winner, who won it. I consider things like America's Cup. You know, it's a different kind of approach. It's a recurring thing, sparked tons of innovation. It's got a class of runner-ups, but there's always one winner. And that, for example, we're talking about financing, that's drawn in a ton of money on a not-for-profit basis. There's, yeah, sure, Oracle's name is all over that boat, but they spent a lot more money to get out of it. But it brought a ton of money in, and part of it is just bragging rights. But again, it's because you have the winner on down. Happy to talk more as we get into the conversation.
All right, Fabian?
Well, thanks, Will, and I appreciate being here. I think I'm more of the dreamer than these guys in the sense of, I was telling my daughter this morning, she said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to meet with a bunch of rocket scientists. She said, really, Dad, where are you going? I said, I'm going to meet with a bunch of rocket scientists. I could see her roll her eyes and go, yeah. And it was very important for me to just listen to her and have a chat to her. Right? The sense is that I'm an African Australian. I know I have a funny accent. You have to forgive me. I also have a little bit of flu. But I tell you that story because I have been living in the United States for 10 years, but it's taken me a quarter of a century to get here. And it's really an important part of my life. And what happened was, July 1969, I was 10 years old. Right? And I know a couple of you guys are trying to work out how old I am. You guys can do it like that. I have been in audiences where I've told the story and I've actually used calculators to work it out. And I was on safari with my dad in Africa. Oh boy, I was 10 years old. And I remember it vividly. I was in Botswana. And my dad called me over to his old car. I don't remember exactly what it was. And he had dialed into the Voice of America at the time. And myself and a number of kids from the village, kids that, by the way, at that time I didn't even see a car, let alone never heard of radios, right? And I was mesmerized at the time because we were listening to the moon landing. It was incredible, and how my dad had spun the story. And I'd never forgotten that, in the sense of this country and what it did. Right? And I hear the gentleman talking about this, and I heard a little earlier on talking about your mission or your dreams and so on. And as an outsider, I'm a marketer. I've marketed on 4 continents. I've been head of global marketing for an organization. Business Week is listed in there's 118 in the top 1,000 corporations. I've worked for small startups. I've worked in marketing in China and so on and so forth. I've kind of seen the world in many ways. Today, just incidentally, as I make a living, I retired about 5 years ago with about 3 zeros too short. Came back out of it and realized that, decided what I wanted to do. And today I actually help individuals and organizations spin stories, tell stories about their dreams. And I think this is becoming more and more important and significant. But coming back to what I hear here and speak this other chats with Will, it's really interesting. And I just put this point up for consideration. I don't believe it's neither right nor wrong. I don't think this is anything with the money, the prize that you guys are offering, with anything to do with the opportunity. I do believe the winner is important. But I think there's this vast, huge, unbelievable market sitting out there to be involved in what you guys are doing. And I personally, in turn, take us on as a mission. Going back to these young kids that go to the school, I had this dream to watch a rocket launch. I wanted to go see the shuttle launch, the last one. I was kind of pissed off that I could not find people to get enthusiastic with me. And I was really annoyed that I couldn't get the children to get enthusiastic. And you guys have become blasé about this incredible thing, which I know nothing about other than this country putting these people into space. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm happy to give my 2 cents worth and listen to you guys and chat about it. So again, my name is Fabian, and thanks very much for having me. I think our facilitator has history of my life. So perhaps I'll open up the floor to the first questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Wade.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So I guess from the lead up, you talked about the internet revolution before it was seen as a revolution.
Yeah.
Right. A bunch of quacks. How exactly did they? I mean, like I understand, like, you know, they put in sweat and they made a business out of it. But I guess the question I'm asking is like, how they survive before they could able to make some money.
Excellent question. Our question is always survival, right? Because the market's going to be good. One comment for you guys, and I'll say this, give you a perspective on how professional finance people think about markets as they evolve. We think of it in terms of, you know, the amount of money is going to go in, the amount you're going to get back. Obviously, you kind of boil it down. That's the algebra that we, you know, paid to deal with. It's a U function. You know, time, money. When you're early in a market, it's going to cause. This is true for single companies. It's true for, you can kind of aggregate it to a whole market though. But it's a simplification. It was pretty valuable, I think. The first part of the market is way up here, right? You know, the amount of money you got to put in to get anywhere. You're too early, you're trying to evangelize, you're trying to teach the whole globe about whatever, people are not ready for you. You gotta put a ton of money in to get anywhere. If you wait too long, you gotta put it, to me, kind of like a lot of internet stuff today, right? You know, and pets.com, when it came out. You gotta put a ton of money in to rise above the noise, because not everybody understands what you're doing, but everyone can do it too. The sweet spot is down here. There are not that many you can do it, but the world is ready for you. Now, the reason I bring that up is in response, direct response to your question. I don't have an answer for how to do it, but it's to point out the challenge for everyone. You guys are way up here, way up here. You got, if you want to be players, even when it's exciting, you got to figure out how to survive into the sweet spot of this function, and that's hard. Now, if you look at what other people, well, I guess one thing you can do is you can think about different markets, you know, different segments and where they are. So, internet is all on here, all this kind of stuff now. You guys are way up here. My personal view, the next one, you know, coming in here, robotics. Right? Robotics is ahead of you guys. You know, we've done 2 robotics deals, I'm really interested in robotics. But it ain't down here yet, but it's right back there. But as an early stage venture guy, that's what I'm looking for. Right? Those kind of companies. But there's been a proof case. You know, iRobot's kind of a weird company. Right? But when you're trying to think about how you survive, I think about guys like iRobot. What did they do? They got a lot of government funding. So one of the answers, right? They went for pretty low cost kind of thing, right? They found a kind of out of center venture firm that gave them some money after they'd done a bunch of this government work already. They got money from this group out of Acer. Right? Not really mainstream Silicon Valley venture firms. So that's a possibility for you. But before those, they're smart guys. Before they would give them any money, they already had the government success and all that. So they were kind of coming, they felt like, okay, the company's coming down the curve. It's getting it down in here. Then iRobot goes public. It's still kind of a weird company. It's like back to government sponsor stuff, because so much of it is just driven by the passion of the people behind the company. Right? And that's what you find up here. And that's why you guys are all like that. You wouldn't be sitting in this room on a Sunday morning, right? It's the people with the passion who are not giving up and want to survive in this period. And you know, the reason I came here to talk and listen is because I got a lot of respect for this. You know, people have that kind of passion. You know, all behind you, right? But how do you survive? A lot of it is just going to be passion and willingness and belief in what you're doing. Someone's going to be luck. A lot of it is going to be trying to kind of keep this dynamic in mind and not getting overextended. Standard failure mode for people are folks who, let me put it this way, entrepreneurial folks who succeed are back in here usually see the world clearer than the rest of the planet. And what drives everyone nuts is you just can't appreciate the inertial mechanisms at work in the world around you. And you think, it's so painfully obvious to me this is a good thing. How come nobody else gets it, right? But that's just the way it is. And the fact is, everyone is caught up in their own things when it does take a while. But the reason I bring that up is there's this huge tendency to then get overextended because it's so clear to you what needs to be done. So, and it's hard to say this to entrepreneurial types, or again, you wouldn't be here. You need to try to temper the enthusiasm with a recognition that there is a ton of friction and inertia in the rest of the world. So be careful not to overextend. What other kind of things could an industry do to help get into this zone? I think about it. One, and this is a rough one, one is maybe a little higher measure of cooperation amongst the groups. You know, one of the things that's typical of what happens is that there are a few people back here who get it, and they all fight with each other, right? Mm-hmm. And you waste resources. What you can't afford to do is waste resources, because you're going to find they're just so hard to get. And the resources are money, their time for people, getting excellent people to work for you, getting them to keep their passion up. Those human resources, they're all a big deal. And if, you know, unnecessary spats, political spats, religious spats, these are the kind of things that occur back here. When the real enemy is the friction and inertia of the world around you, not other people in this room, right? So there's a real tendency to waste precious resources on, okay, I don't know what the equivalent would be here. Are we going to have, you know, 3 fins or 4? What kind of, you know, guidance system are we going to use? Whatever, you know, whatever. We're going to be 50 kilograms, or is it got to be 3? Right? The real the real competitors are out there someplace. One of the ways I think that I wouldn't be surprised to see, and again, it gets to be prisoner's dilemma kind of stuff are always a big deal, but one of the things that you can imagine is a little more specialization of effort earlier on than you'd otherwise expect. Often what keeps the passion here, right, is we want to be the guys who win the NASA challenge. We want to be the ones. So everybody wants to be the ones. Well, maybe somebody ought to say, no, we'll do nozzles for everybody. I don't know what. We'll do, you know, guidance control for everyone. Maybe not. Maybe it's not going to be just, it won't be one guy. I mean, maybe there are going to be 2 or 3 go-to companies. Rather than having 50 people trying to do everything, a little specialization, you know, my guess is extends the resources to help move the whole industry toward that, help you all survive to get to where that's a better time. You know, those things tend to be hard because this is a period where no one really knows what the right answer is. And so there's a real risk of debate of, you know, yeah, we kind of, they're the go-to guys for X, Y, Z, but theirs isn't the best. It's not the best. I'd say look at, you know, if you talk about the internet, what made the internet possible is that there was this college thing, and IETF makes it possible, right? They all get together and they accept a bunch of these standards. So if you look back now, a lot of them were stupid. A lot of them were wrong. And we're stuck with them. You know, years and years later, we're stuck with a bunch of the stuff on IP. It was not designed for the world the way it is now, right? But hey, the fact that people got together and agreed to standardize on it saved a ton of money. And the reason these guys survived when the Microsoft Hydra, all this kind of stuff, they were with all the technology they had, they were all going to bring stuff to the desktop and all this junk. That was all going to be totally proprietary. That just created a lot of people who were dedicated to kill it. And instead, in the university community, yeah, you'd get some people who were so passionate about, you know, do you need an extra stop at that or not? They're probably ready to go out and fist fight. But in the grand scheme of things, it saved a ton of resources that people weren't all reinventing this stuff. So I don't know if it's possible in your segment or not. There's you can do that stuff. Things will extend.
That's part of, you know, if you look at the CubeSat effort, I mean, that is a standardization of a package. You know, talking about different dimensions, you know, you can do the 1U volume, there's even a 1.5U, you know, 2 1.5Us make up a 3U, and some of those standards are already, I see, embraced within just as you're structuring this competition, and that people are focused on that. But also I'd like to elaborate on your point about focus, and that you know, just having been you know, on a bunch of development programs, if you have a pretty clear goal about where you're going, and stick to that, and you know, start off by looking at where you think the market's going to be, because I think this CubeSat market is fairly broad and may involve reaching out to different communities in different ways, and you've got to figure out, how am I going to reach out to that community? If I wanted to work with the industry, one of the things I thought was surprising, if you look at there was an NRO study a couple of years ago on, we're going to do a call for CubeSats, who would like to participate? Their expectation was that it was going to be 80% universities and 20% industry. Number one, they got more responses than they expected. Number two, 60% of those responses were from industry, so that the CubeSat provides sort of a low barrier to entry for small companies to get into the space business. You know, if you're going to go after the industries, you got to figure out, how am I going to connect up with those people and let them know that I have a launch opportunity? How do they want? Do they want onesie, twosie type launches because maybe their stuff is proprietary? Maybe they want to go into particular orbits. You know, if I'm going after the university community, maybe those guys want to have, you know, a large end of year launch opportunity because the season ends. I mean, the school season ends in the spring, and that's what people want. How long do they want their orbits? You know, for students, they've kind of worked the year. You know, they're going to be together for a week at the end of the year to operate it, and then after that, they sort of don't care. So I think you can, you know, if you're just thinking, I've got to launch CubeSats, that's part of the problem. But I think it's worthwhile to understand, what market do I really want to go after? Because I've got to generate market awareness about my product, and that is, you go out to, you know, angel and venture capital community. You want to show people that, hey, I've got people actually buying my product. That I've already got people lined up that know about me, that have signed up to purchase my service, and you know, we're working on getting them launched. And I think it is pretty broad. Just because someone has the academic market, you know, there's even, I was down in Kentucky, you've got high school students that are working on you know, building out, you know, the senior level high school students, where the comment is that it sort of pulls together the entire science educational curriculum. You know, how am I going to reach out to those people? Working with the space portals, whether it's Florida Space or Kentucky Space, or you know, Spaceport America, or you know, I don't know what Oklahoma's doing these days, and but you know, you've got to kind of build those, as a company, build those relationships to those groups and say, hey, you know, I've got a product, you know, who can I get to support that and funnel customers into your business? And I think if, I know Amresh was slated to be here, and you know, the comment is that, you know, if you look at where we are in this industry, it's almost like you've got the PC, the birth of the PC, the birth of the internet, and the birth of cell phone software apps, kind of all happening at the same time in parallel. You're trying to build out that internet infrastructure so that everybody can communicate. You launch your CubeSat, how am I going to get that data down? You know, just see you guys later. You know, what's going to happen there? I mean, that's that infrastructure component. You know, the CubeSats are kind of like the PC part. And then if you look at that, is that a Heathkit PC, a Dell PC, an Apple PC? You know, the CubeSat has its different components on that. And then everyone wants to know, what's the killer app that I'm going to be running on those CubeSats? And so if you look at the industry, you know, it's not like we've got sort of 20, you know, plus years of development going on here. You've really got everything sort of proceeding simultaneously, and so that gets to be a little bit confusing. And I think if you could look at that and sort of decode it and say, well, our company is focused on this particular aspect, and, you know, talk about the supply chain. You know, are we a single segment of the supply chain? Yeah, we provide the best of this component for vehicle launchers and serve other elements of the industry, or are we sort of totally vertically integrated and do everything soup to nuts? And if you look at the COTS program, COTS is a kind of an example of two different development methodologies. That Orbital has a very broad supply chain where they bring these components in and integrate them. SpaceX is totally vertically integrated, where, you know, they sent you, sheet metal comes in and rockets come out the end, and those are choices you make, and how you run your business depends on that. So it's not just I'm going to build. It can be I'm going to build something and launch it and, you know, succeed, but the success of your business, I would say, involves thinking about all these issues and making choices about how I want to do that. And, you know, maybe Orbital and SpaceX will both be successful in serving the COTS community. There's no single formula that's going to win. It depends on how you manage those choices that you've made.
So a question I have for the market side, for the people that win the competition, that's pretty easy. Everybody likes to win. Yeah, what are you guys doing? Let me hear more about you. What about the folks that compete that came in 4th or 5th or 6th? What do they do? What can they do?
If I may go to what Wade was saying earlier on, there's kind of like a collective energy in a group. And I would advise consideration to market as a group, as a community, as an evolving community. How you fight it out internally, it's a separate issue. But to go collectively to the world, because, you know, you talk about, I have to tell you, right, I actually brought in an example. Again, thank you, you brought it up. This little flag, right? This flag is signed by Dennis Conner. How many of you heard of Dennis Conner? What? Well, Dennis Conner was the guy who lost the America's Cup after 130 years. He lost it to the Australians. The day he lost it, the Prime Minister of Australia at the time, Bob Hawke, declared a national holiday, and everyone got the world got behind in Australia at the time, their innovation. If you look at the America's Cup, the hundreds of millions poured into it. The prize at the end of the day is the cup, not the money. Right? And I guess there's a lot of power in the sailing community around the America's Cup. I don't know if there's much power in the America's Cup in terms of the larger community. And I certainly think today in the world to spend hundreds of millions on beautiful sailing boats to sail around San Francisco Bay is going to, I know there's a lot of guys camping in Oakland are going to be a little peeved about it. All right? But this flag, the cost of this flag I'm holding in my hand is $3 million. Right? And I know because my predecessor at the time gave the America's Cup guys $3 million to be associated with the America's Cup. Came without anything, without any logos, without anything. I mean, I took over, I said, what are we getting for this exactly? What is our community getting for it? I said, well, it's America's Cup, right? And I later, you know, the lawyers got involved and I cancelled it because it wasn't a bigger picture. And I feel very much that as an outsider, I don't know much how many of you guys are in this for the dream, the adventure, commercial enterprise, whatever it is, but there's a very strong collective energy here. So to answer your question, I think if you address it from that side, there will be a winner, a victor, but everyone's got to be winning from that side. And I do think today to get $2 million as a prize is kind of a little self-serving in some ways. But doing this venture, sending something that most people have no idea, and informing the world. There's a bunch of guys sitting on a Sunday morning without any coffee, right? Right? Got together and did it. To me, there's a great marketing spin in that for yourselves. I'm not sure if I answered your question per se.
Yeah, I think you have, and I guess my struggle, just some insight, is for the federal government. We really can't put much, and we can't put much in there as far as the promotional aspect. But that's why we sign on with an allied organization, Percy. Right. We give them full carte blanche to run the competition to do that kind of thing.
Right.
And so they go out, get the sponsors, and be able to do the promotional aspects, put the websites out, get the media attention. We can use the NASA brand because it does bring people it does open doors. Like I was telling the story yesterday, as much as I was naive, I was pretty naive with my first competition. I walked in, thought, okay, great, let's call CNN and tell them what's going on so they could do the article. They couldn't give a crap about us. They don't. You're like, no, we don't got time. We're not going to put the effort. We had to build it up from the beginning. Start with the newspaper, start with the radio, get the TV. Then you can finally get national internet. Then you can finally start getting national media. And you had to grow it like everything else. And we're getting there, thank goodness. So that I think by the time we get to this challenge, and we conduct this challenge, I think we will have our foot in the door to be able to grab the media attention on a national level to do the promotional aspects. But again, that comes out of the NASA brand, and we can leverage that, or the allied organization can leverage that to try to do the promotional aspects.
Yeah, there's two compatible issues here. One is actually a fixed size pie and a growing pie. And so this is talking about the growing pie. And in a mature industry, you consider it to be a fixed pie, and everybody's trying to get the biggest piece of that particular mature industry. We don't have a mature industry here. I mean, this is something new. It's a lean startup approach. This is a growing industry. We really actually have to have validated learning to figure out where we're going. From a marketing perspective, you've got the growing side of things. From the running the business side of marketing, there's, again, two aspects, the difference between marketing and branding. So if you can do both with these kinds of projects. So the marketing side is more of, here's this kind of thing that we produce, and that gets into the specialization, that we are really good at this, we are really good at that. And being associated and proving that you can get something to space, or you can get something to the higher orbits and the more elliptical orbits better than somebody else, or the polar orbits better than somebody else, can bring you more customers. From the branding perspective, if your name is on everybody's rocket because you are the parts supplier for all of these teams, or 90% of these teams, then you're associated with the bigger picture. It's like you are involved with these big challenges. You are involved with the high-risk things. You are involved with the avant-garde. You are the forefront.
On your question, you should consider America's Cup, the Oscars, all sorts of competitions. Playoffs even are like that. There's a competition to be a finalist. Then everyone can say, I'm a finalist. And then there's a winner, right? So you could even run a two-phase where you got to do something to be a finalist, and then something else to pick the winner out of the finalists. Now, one of the challenges I think is figuring out what you're measuring on. You're set, when you set this is our minimum, you got to do this, and who's first, or whatever. These other competitions always have something else. The nice thing about America's Cup is, okay, who's fastest? And that can get better and better and better and better, right? It's not a fixed thing, and I don't know what you guys can use, ratio of payload to vehicle or mass, or I don't know what, right? Figure out something that can scale, and maybe even that evolves over time. The other interesting thing about both Oscars and America's Cup, it's not a one-shot. It's repeated. I mean, America's Cup is what, every 4 years? 5 years?
4.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But, and they don't blow the whole $2 million in one shot, right? Of course, that, whatever the initial charter was like not a lot of money, but.
Yeah, I guess that's where we struggle with federal funding. We can't do it on an annual basis.
No,
or continual basis, except for to just keep holding back the money. Set the bar so high that you do it for a year. You run a series of competitions, nobody won. Okay, so you go back to the drawing board and try to
go down an organization.
No, that's strictly for prizes. But you could imagine that if you, as a user community out there, they're basically the people that want to build satellites in orbit. They could organize, a annual or biannual competition for the best improvement in a launch vehicle which would serve their needs.
Yeah.
I mean, they could organize them. The user community could organize for their own benefit.
That might be some way of thinking about it. That the initial NASA funding is kind of to kick off that kind of competition, because I know. Whatever's favorable today may not be favorable tomorrow. Catch can with these things. So
kind of an example of worked on one of our earlier centennial challenges was a lunar regolith digger, and that was one paid out the money, but then it is now been taken over by the folks at NASA Kennedy, who run it as an educational program every year. And, every year they have a robotics, competition for who can dig the most dirt this year, if you will.
Yeah,
So,
some variant on that.
yeah.
If I can just ask the room a quick question, again as an outsider. What's the point of putting stuff in space?
Very good question still.
How do you guys describe it? I mean,
I think I have an answer, but I'd be curious to see what competitors said. So,
I'd say just, mainly to, our future lies in space. Do you know who Peter Diamandis is?
no,
Oh, he's a founder of the original X Prize for getting a man in space. He says, we're like in that pivotal moment in human history where we go into space. We become a spacefaring species, and this only happens once. And after it happens, it's there forever. So I think the reason we go, or reason I would like to put stuff in space is to lay the infrastructure for that to happen. So lay the tracks.
so I'm going to ask you a few questions again if I've got to go back and talk at my children's school. So what?
well, yeah, but why do people put things in space? It's because other people have concepts, ideas, dreams, visions, futures, advancements for America, for the nation, for the world, and the way they can fulfill all of those dreams, all those aspirations, all those technology advances are because they need to do their items in space, and we provide that transportation.
So, if you want a more greedy perspective, there exists a number of people who want to put people in space. Who cares why they do it? Who cares why they do it except that?
The question is why.
May I finish, please? Who cares why they do it except that this dream does indeed fuel a bunch of them? Therefore, there is the market there to serve. That's all you need to prove. There is a market there to serve.
Actually,
So,
if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the problem is that for us and for a number of people who want to go to space, just because we want to, there is a market to service us. But there is an outside community that's far larger we have to appeal to. Why are we doing this other than we want to? So that they may participate and understand and be interested in backing us. Why do we want to have, how can we appeal to them in order to do that?
So there's stuff in space already. There's communication satellites, there's the weather satellites, there's the GPS system. Everyone's got GPS system in their phone or their car or something like that. If you didn't have that in space, you wouldn't have GPS. You wouldn't be able to do that stuff at all.
Yeah.
But if you want to reduce the barriers of entry, reduce the cost so that you can have other industries go up, like faster ways of doing pharmaceuticals, or I don't know. I guess people are poo-pooing the crystalline growth and things of that sort. But other types of experiments that you might only be able to do in microgravity, there needs to be a cheaper way to do it.
I get you. I just wanted to see you guys talk, right?
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
I have to say, because, here's a way. 20 years ago, if you had this talk about the internet,
But
right? If I just finish quickly,
yeah.
I would like to have been able to say, you know what the internet really does for me? It allows my one daughter who has learning disabilities to go onto this thing. You can change your life for the better.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, I wonder how we can drill this room down is, you've got the technicalities and the specifics and the speak and the segments and this and the fins and so on. At the end of the day, I would really love 20 years from now, an 18-year-old bunch of kids in high school to go, can't make it to volleyball on Saturday because we're launching something into space and might add something to our GPS. And it all started from guys like this. You see what I'm trying to get to? And the moment you start, well, for me, the moment we start moving to that realm, is you open up these huge opportunities for crowdfunding, for involvement. It's no longer a bunch of geeks putting something into space for really complex things. It's suddenly a bunch of people doing something that makes humanity better. I get it. I'm like the first guys that sailed across the ocean, right?
I guess you could say another reason. Personally, my deeper reason is, to learn where we came from. Are we alone? What is out there? The desire to discover the unknown. To physically go there, not just see it. To touch it, feel it, possibly smell it.
I like that. I don't know the answers. I'm not trying to say you all have your own reasons. But throwing that in just opens up this thing beyond this room a little bit, I feel.
So
Go ahead.
I like what he just said, but I won't tell that to the business people. Now, so I've been struggling with, I mean, we talked yesterday about what is there a killer app? And like a lot of people, I can't identify the killer app. And I think part of it is because what you really need is to build up an ecosystem or the supply chain around things before you can even enable, something like a killer app. I mean,
I agree.
the internet is built on.
The killer apps come later.
Yeah.
Remember
Yeah,
PCs when they came out? Why did anyone want a PC at the home? It was, well, you can put your recipes on it. I may be older than most of you guys, but I mean, that was the big deal. Because you put your recipes, you go down to Computer History Museum, right? And they showed this, like the first home computer they got of the picture, the mock-up or whatever. And what was the application they talked about? It was like in the 60s or something, right? It's there in the museum. It's really funny. They show this, this lady, of course, all dressed up like a 60s housewife is supposed to look. And she's typing into this thing the size of this table to get her recipe back. When the internet stuff was, what was the killer app? There was no web anything where we were getting that going. I mean, the web was a joke. It was text oriented, and so it has hyperlinks. That's all there was. You colored text. That was it. All this stuff comes as it's a self-ascension spiraling process, and it's magic, and it works in these new segments, but you can't force it. Right? It's gonna happen when it happens, and that's why for you guys trying to figure out how to make something actionable out of it, you gotta survive. You gotta survive, and you gotta be there, and you gotta react as things happen. And no one's gonna be able to predict what that first hire. Everyone who tries to predict this is what's gonna be that hot company. If everyone thinks it's gonna be that, the hot company back then, or the hot area, whatever it is, maybe it's doomed to failure because it's too obvious. Usually this stuff surprises people.
So since we made so many internet analogies, just talking that back, what is the killer app of the internet? Not a killer app that would justify the internet by itself, but the one single killer app that is far more important than anything else you do on the internet. I submit that there is none. There are so many killer apps out there, but there is no one far more important than anything else.
I have to comment with that, and that is that the internet allows rapid access to information that you did not have before. Because 20 years ago, I mean, to look up something, you didn't, or to send something, unless you were one of the very few, you didn't have that ability.
How many people have the 2011 supplement, the Encyclopedia Britannica?
But that's kind of circular, right? Because it's communications technology, and so the answer is what's awesome about it is that it's fast communications.
The thing is, okay, even if you go to something as broad as that, well, electronic commerce, or you can break that down into a bunch of different, what types of information, the static information, the email, the social communication, all of that.
Yeah,
there are so
That's
many
exactly
different.
right. There are lots of them, and they come and go in waves.
Right.
But having a few of them that are big and popular, that's what propels you. Email, I mean, the internet started out hot at the beginning, because I remember, when I made this investment, no one had a clue what I was talking about. They all thought I was stupid. So, well, that's some government thing. Why would you put any money in that? And the reason it took off, in my personal opinion, is that email and this stuff matched the personal habits of journalists. Because it was cheap, and they're cheap. It's inter-corporate and inter-everything, which is what their life is about, right? And it was really convenient for them. And so they talked about it more than it should have been talked about. But I just remember watching, because I was wondering, was this going to go anywhere? And then the journalists all started talking about it way before they should have. But there'll be stuff like that where it gets you get buzz kind of ahead of your time. And that's great. You just can't, again, it's pushing on a string on a lot of these things. But the key is, my point is survival. And I would encourage you guys to be thinking about what you can learn from prior, because you've seen a bunch of tech revolutions, right? With the PC, and outside of electronics stuff, you see it in gene stuff and all that junk. And we're all, even the younger of us here, are still old enough to have seen a number of them in our lifetime. And around this area, it's really amazing to be living here with that. And I would encourage you to look at those and what can you learn from them about surviving to where your market is ready for you. Because I totally agree with you guys. I mean, if you looked at any of these and asked them at this stage, what's your killer app going to be, you'd have gotten answers that you look back 10 years later and would laugh. Right? Because smart, there are going to be lots of, you guys are really smart. There are going to be lots of other smart people coming after you. They're going to take what you've done and build on it.
Yeah, killer app is more of a characteristic than a particular thing. when you have a killer app, you're either shrinking time or space or something or other, so you step over a modality into another step function where all of a sudden doing things this way becomes much more efficient than doing things that way. You get this big major shift. So it's
there's so much of it, like in the early days of the internet again, right? In 1990 or whatever, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to create this thing because we're going to make a lot of money and we're going to do it. It's like, I'm tired of carrying these mag tapes from that place to that place, so I'm going to put a wire there instead, right? And why am I going to do it? Well, it's just easier and it's kind of cool, right? And this is the room full of people that think it's kind of cool, right? And the thing, oh, I'm doing this because my daughter 20 years from now is going to be able to do something cool, interesting on the internet, irrelevant. So,
but the point is, it's going to happen, right?
It's going to happen, but nobody here has any idea what it is.
You know, in 1983, I got kicked out of this country by the American authorities, right? I came here, I went to immigration in Los Angeles, and I said, I'm a South African soldier, and I want political asylum. And I said, what? I said, I'm a South African soldier, I want political asylum. He said, you've been watching too many movies. Next. And I was like stunned, right? And I had to go back. And at the time, for one reason or another, I got a job as a very young person, marketing, I had a military background, obviously you heard that, marketing non-woven fabrics developed by NASA into places like Angola and Mozambique hospitals, right? Which is really, when you think about it, this was this high-tech product used for infection control, unbelievably proportionally expensive into countries in civil war. I mean, I used to drive with guys who drove shotgun for me. But the application came out of this stuff developed by NASA, as told to me, right? Incidentally, it's still not used in many hospitals in the United States, where I think it's kind of strange, but I'm talking about 30 years ago. But who would have imagined, when this stuff had been developed, that later some guy would be driving in Mozambique and selling this stuff to hospitals? So I think, so the point I'm kind of get to is, you can drill down and get into the minutiae and the specifics and the details and get lost in it. But really, as a collective group, this is a great story. And it's important, and I think that if that story gets out, there is a much larger audience and a much larger place you can tap into funds for. There's no reason why REI can't get involved in this. REI has adventurous kind of customers as a consumer base. The story of people going up there was another adventure story, right? So I'm not bringing it to this kind of philosophical thing. But I often say to my people I work with, is just bring it down to the narrative. Because you will lose it. I've had many people approach me for sponsorships, and it often becomes the argument, am I being philosophic, altruistic, or am I talking about a sponsorship? He said, these things, what am I going to get back for my money? And I tell you, that's what it comes down to. ROI, right? ROI, return on investment, throw that out. ROI today is return on interaction. Right? And this has become the play. We interact with people with narrative.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about the competition is that you want to structure it such that it allows time for the community to develop it, and that you can get some, as you say, return on investment from that community. Because there's a story, if you just look at the GLXP guys, I mean, I think they've sort of realized this as things are moving forward, their blogging requirements and all those things, is to try and get some insight into the personal dynamics. If people come to this program and say, why should I be interested in it? They want to understand something about the people that are involved. Who are the individual stories? So that might be more of a comment for Space Florida about how do you structure this. But if you don't take advantage of that, you're kind of leaving money on the table. You're putting $2 million out as prize money. Your return on investment is how much awareness can I generate about small payloads? How much awareness can I generate about, let's say, entrepreneurial activities in space? How much awareness can I generate about the personal dynamics of teams that are building components or building integrated systems? If you look at the Northrop Lander challenge, I mean, it was Dave Maston that ended up on the cover of Air and Space, as a entrepreneur of the year. But John Carmack is doing very well with their Stig vehicle. So they didn't make it onto the cover, but they're still making good progress with their vehicle too. And that they're probably you know, there were fewer people participating in that effort than there can be within the Nano Launch Challenge. And so you'd like to allocate enough time so that you can kind of get the word out. It's always hard getting the word out. You got to, you know, say it until people are repeating it back. Oh, you again. You know, I know what you're going to tell me. Good. I don't,
999.
yeah, I don't. Right. I don't think I'm missing you. Yeah. That's there's a marketer that's going to be. But you know, get out there and repeat that. Allow enough time so that people kind of have awareness of it, and then allow enough time such that the competition can kind of play itself out and play up that human factors story, which is inevitable as people work on projects.
You know, the thing that's difficult about this is that it's not pretty much everything else we've done has been more or less head-to-head competitions, as opposed to what we're facing here is like, all right, well, I want to launch from Space Florida, you know, in June, and somebody else says, well, I want to go from, you know, New Mexico in, you know, July, and somebody else wants to fly from an airport and, you know, God knows where, and so, you know, it's certainly more challenging for promoting, you know, and getting covered.
Wasn't that the case with the original X Prize?
Yeah.
Yeah, they originally did it down at Spaceport America, I mean, whatever year that was. In 2007, they had the competition down in Las Cruces at the air show.
Oh, well, I was
right, and then they moved it to.
No, I was referring to the original Ansarian X Prize.
Oh yeah, sure, right.
Right. I mean, people were doing their things in different places. It wasn't necessarily a single location.
I have a question for Fabian. So you asked us like why we're doing this. What about you? Why you? What was special about that moment when we set foot on the moon, or anything else? What would you tell your daughter? Like why go to space?
She wasn't born yet.
Because I'm like Kennedy, but I can tell you because it's just appeared to me. It's just tough. It's just amazing. It's beyond the norm, beyond the standard things of life. In that pattern of it's adventurous in many ways. You know, you get philosophical in this whole stuff, but to me, it is, as you say, I don't care where you guys are launching from. I'm involved. Right? You can launch from Antarctic or South America. These are details internally important to you guys, right? But for the larger mission, vision, rather, it's a great story. Now, actually, by the way, I think it's time. It's really come again in many ways to do it in the world as it is. Not from big corporations, not from big but the story here is that there are a smaller bunch of individuals that have taken on something that the perception has always been big but locked away, big rockets. And I think people have lost that interest. It's been killed. Right? But you guys can bring it back.
I'd be curious if I could ask each of you, when you first hear the word NASA, what do you think of?
I think of 1960s.
Okay, what do you think of?
You know, the moon landing and ISS and, you know, the shuttle missions.
Mine goes back to my intern experience in 76 and 77. It's just a personal relationship with the people at the organization at that time.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a dated brand.
Yeah. Actually, I could tell. Can I say something? I work at a Chabot Space and Science Center during the week, and I take school kids out on things, on tours and things, and awareness of what NASA does besides manned spaceflight is zero.
Right.
Right? And even the manned spaceflight is like 1 out of 100.
So, do they know about Hubble?
Some of the probably not. They probably don't know the name of it. They know that they've seen some cool pictures of things from outer space, right?
You know,
But does anybody have any? You ask how many people know that there's 3 astronauts taking off tonight?
I had no idea, really.
Right. Well,
One from Russia.
even in this room, there's 3 astronauts taking off tonight. How many people knew that?
I know there's just 3 living in space right now.
Right. I ask this question. I get to a busload of school kids, and I say, how many people are in space right now? And usually I get high numbers. Right? Oh, 1,000, 500. No, it's like 0.
So
no.
I bring that up because to me, this is what is exciting about Centennial Challenges, is that it does give us the opportunity, and we are trying. I'm trying to promote that NASA is on the leading edge of technology, because it is a very dated brand. It is Apollo, space station, and shuttle. but you try to get anything beyond that and talk to people beyond that. And, well, what about Hubble? Oh yeah, those space pictures, star pictures, stars, those are pretty cool too. But you have to prompt it out of them. And so how do you get people to start thinking that what's being done out there is innovative, high-tech, new, leading edge, and that kind of thing. And so it's...
I mean, I grew up in the 60s, right? And I wasn't following NASA because it was high-tech and innovative. You know, it goes back to your comment about why are we in space. I mean, as growing up in that period, we were part of your adventure, right? I don't believe that people today feel that they're part of the NASA adventure.
Yeah.
So a message for, you know, if you carry that for you guys, where what you're really appealing to is the adventure of being out in outer space. You talk about your dreams. No one has much interest in, you know, because I have lots of people come to me with their dream. You know, their dream is to build a water filter for XYZ. You know, my job is not to help you, you know, enjoy making your dream. It's what's that going to mean to everyone else around you, right? So to the extent that you guys, you know, you're passionate because of this adventure, think of ways you can bring other people into your adventure.
So
you can paint the story, but you got to get inclusive.
All this technology for communications as well that you can use. I mean, what brought us into part of the NASA adventure was we had real-time concert, real-time video of all those things. You can ever do concert real-time video, it's today. You know, but it's got to have a little bit of spectacle to it, I'm sure. But
doesn't have real-time video, it's not there.
Bring people into your adventure. I mean, that's what Will's trying to do with all this blogging and all that.
So if I may, there's also one of the really important things. It needs to be exciting. It needs to be interesting. NASA TV, you have a spacewalk. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it is dull as dirt. Forgive me.
It's totally dull.
You're
being generous.
How hard is it? How hard is it to put a 10 kilogram or 1 kilogram thing into space, really?
How hard?
Didn't they do that back in the 50s? Yeah, what's the big
It's
deal?
extremely hard. I mean, frankly, this is the next Sputnik. This is private entities attempting to do exactly what the Soviets did, and then we followed the explorers and everything else 60 years ago. This is a big deal, and this is something that we're saying people can do it, maybe not for $2 million, but fairly close to it. Back then, you're talking about national entities, the two biggest, most powerful countries in the world doing the exact same thing. Now, it's possible for entrepreneurs to do this. Now, if you don't think that's exciting, and you can't spin it that way, out, go.
I actually consider this one to be more important than the Google Lunar X Prize, to tell you the truth.
In certain ways, yes. But on the other hand, this is something that you guys are going to be doing, and in some ways it's not one I will be doing. I'll explain that later.
Maybe this is to, just something for Sam and Larry is, I think, you're asking them questions of it as a potential player in this. I would say, I think it's also useful for you, speaking to this NASA TV thing, of using NASA public affairs better. You know, from dealing with NASA for more than a decade, on and off as a layperson and as a professional, I think public affairs could have done a much better job in many areas. And I would like, for these competitors, if public affairs could be leveraged, you know, NASA public affairs, civil servants better. And maybe this is a way to also do things in different ways within NASA for you folks. I don't know if it's possible. It may be very difficult.
Well, I guess for awareness for folks, I did petition and I was able to receive an FTE, a full-time equivalent. I get to hire somebody, and their sole dedicated job is a media manager.
That's good.
So for Centennial Challenges, there's going to be one person fully dedicated to getting the human interest stories, getting the after the challenge websites spun up, getting the YouTube channel, because I haven't started Facebook, I haven't started YouTube, because I'm not going to open that up, create one, and not put content on it. So I want to get a person that's their dedicated job is to do that, maintain that, update that, fulfill it, populate it.
How is that not a responsibility of Space Florida? With responsibility?
Because I have 6 different challenges I'm running.
Yeah, just the Centennial Challenge, but just say for this challenge
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, for this challenge in particular, which I believe is run by Space Florida, you can say, you know, you guys, we want a certain level of outreach. This is the kind of outreach that
and that is in their that's in the Space Act agreement we've signed with them already. So they do have a level of responsibility on their own part, just for this challenge only.
Yeah.
And then I've taken an additional level of responsibility for the program.
Right. So that you can have those stories that are happening on individual challenges kind of percolate up
Yes.
to the NASA level and then kind of come out, because there's always I mean, working on the SOFIA program, I know there's a time delay on, what gets briefed and, who signs off on all this stuff. And, but I think that, just if I talk a minute about the SOFIA program, what's important about that is the people that are involved, the human interest stories. And as you do this competition, you have an opportunity to get those individual stories and kind of get them out. And, you can do it on sort of a regular basis so that people can see, oh, here's progress is happening on a monthly basis, weekly basis, and so forth. And then take that material and then funnel that up to the NASA level so it can show up on, NASA Select.
Yeah, and I think that's where the after the challenge prospect comes from, because we did a competition, Astronaut Glove, where we had a garage inventor, independent inventor, been laid off, wins the competition, goes off, starts a spacesuit company. So now he's a vendor for that. But the better part to the story is he's diverged his business base. So now he's coming up with a conceptual idea that you can find on his website, where he said, there's mild traumatic brain injury from for warfighters, for example. If they can get them in a hyperbaric chamber, and I've told these people already about this, but if you can get them in a hyperbaric chamber, the sooner, the better it is for less damage. So there aren't very many hyperbaric chambers in the middle of Afghanistan. So his idea was take a spacesuit, drop the atmospheric pressure down to 13, 12, whatever's necessary, and now it's a portable unit. You stick the person in, you zip it up, you seal it up, you drop the pressure down. They're in their own hyperbaric chamber. So he's got this hyperbaric suit that he's starting to try to get to market, trying to promote, trying to advertise, trying to get out there, get capital to support the growth of his company for that direction. So, I mean, that whole concept, that's another great human interest story to capitalize on. And that's something that I want to continue to do for all of our past challenges, for our current challenges. What happens when the people finish? Where do they go? Where do they diverge to? And keep those stories coming and alive.
I think people want to get engaged with NASA, but they kind of don't know how to get engaged. I mean, that's, before where you sort of had the astronaut story, the original, Mercury Apollo astronauts, you kind of, connect with them, and then towards the end, everyone was sort of fading off. It's like, oh yes, it's another mission. And now with ISS and the shuttle, it's all almost unreachable for people. And I think this is, the Centennial Challenges is a message that people can interact with these challenges and be successful, and that there is a way for startup groups. I mean, in particular, if you're focused on entrepreneurship, you can encourage people, even just university groups that say, gee, I'm an aerospace engineer, what are my career choices? I can go work for NASA, which is what I want. I can go work for an aerospace company, or I can go work for Google. You'd like to have another option, which is I can actually have an entrepreneurial effort in aerospace, and that, your message on the Centennial Challenge is entrepreneurship is important. We think entrepreneurship is important for the industry. I mean, the big DoD contractors may not like that because for whatever their reasons are, but entrepreneurship is important for our country, and it's important for the aerospace industry. And so I think you can provide real, not only just say that message, but provide real examples of entrepreneurs going out, going through the trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur, being too early, not being focused, not making the wrong decisions, not really understanding my market, and have these guys sort of serve as that inspiration for our next generation of what should be our spacefaring nation.
I have a quick question for Sean. So you two talked about basically how can space be made to make people's lives better. That's like the basic question. So I was wondering, with the applications you're working with, what would you see as some of the potential far field applications that could answer that question?
Yeah, I always think of it in terms of the markets, and having come from the Kentucky space guys, there are those people that just want to build CubeSats as part of their educational curriculum, and it can be that they have canned experiments that they want to fly. That's part of their program, part of their lab effort. How broad is that? I don't know. We've got ITAR problems that will limit the U.S. If U.S. develops products, how can they ship them all across the world. You know, if you look at nanoracks, they just signed a deal with Saudi Arabia to provide, you know, experimental space on the ISS as part of their their nanoracks deal for, you know, Saudi Arabian students and educators, and so there's that, you know, education market. There's also the startup areas, and I think a number of people are looking at, there's NASA Ames has their Pharmasat. Everyone would like to say, gee, how can we get the pharmaceutical industry engaged in microgravity? Microgravity again, what are the benefits of microgravity, whether it's on the ISS or as a free-flying satellite? You know, there can be, you know, it's up to the sort of the CubeSat marketers. Here in the Bay Area, we have a company called Skybox, and Skybox is kind of revisiting, you know, what can be sort of, they want to think of themselves not as a satellite company, but as an internet company where they provide just-in-time imaging data of parts of the globe, so that if you want to know how many people, or I suppose how many people are shopping at Home Depot, you know, you can access that data and say, oh, well, you know, here's, I can count up all the cars in the parking lot. How are people using my resources? So that's kind of the imaging. I think they were, you know, originally thinking about, you know, small, you know, a pool of small satellites that would go out and collect that. I think they believe they've kind of modified that from what they originally had intended. But, you know, there can be, you know, I've got, you know, a communication need, and I would like to use, you know, smaller payloads to serve that market. So that depends upon what orbit you're in, what your altitude is. You know, communications, imaging, individual microgravity experiments, and I know the MIT CubeSats that have imaging, and they want to do that for astronomy. You might look at something like you know, SLU.com. SLU.com is an online telescope service, which is, you know, available. A guy started a company after 9/11, saying, "Gee, what's my purpose in life? I'd really like to honor my friends by starting this online telescope service." And you can log on, you can hear the audio about what they're observing. You know, you could take that same small sat concept and put it on, you know, put that small telescope set, you know, bring it online for serving that market of people. You know, whoever signed up on SLU.com, you know, maybe you'd rather have your own space telescope. And even, you know, I did my graduate work in Chicago at the time. They were building 3.5 meter telescopes. So you're kind of getting it. I see what's happening in the space business is, instead of it being at the federal level, you know, United States versus what was the Soviet Union at the time, it's now pushed down to sort of the state level, where you've got Space Florida, there's Kentucky Space, you know, here we had the California Space Authority, there's New Mexico, and if you look at the GDP of the United States, for each state at GDP level, there's a corresponding country that has that sort of comparable GDP level, so that the broad base for who's getting into space is in the United States getting pushed down to the state level, and then on the globe, it's getting pushed down such that Saudi Arabia can now say, yeah, we'd like to sign on the dotted line and have access to the International Space Station. And the truth is, you've got an entire solar system out there. And, you know, Bob Richards gave a talk talking about hoppers associated with their Moon Express program. Small CubeSat in orbit around the Earth, imaging, you know, parts of the Earth. Well, okay, you know, I have certain angular resolution, and that's kind of tough. But what if I took that same volume and I delivered it to the moon or an asteroid? And for the GLXP guys, you know, they're doing it for a couple $1 million a kilogram. And so, you know, if you look, you know, project out, you know, where could we be with these small payload volumes? It's not only things in orbit, things on the ISS, things on the moon, things elsewhere in the solar system, and, you know, get people really excited about, you know, what is this? We're not, you know, we're focused on limited resources on the planet. There's an entire solar system that has resources resources out there. How can we take advantage of those? Very much like going, nobody, there was a, what's his name from Fidelity, has a little intro section talking about investment. The Magellan Fund, Peter Lynch, and he talks about investment in the new world. You know, everyone's like, I expect 50% return for all the colonists that the colonists that I'm sending out there, and you know, what are they going to bring back? You know, it's anyone's guess. So, but in the short term, you know, things that are in low Earth orbit, and getting people to low Earth orbit for imaging, for communications, getting businesses, educators, and you know, making it easy for people too. Some people want to build a Heath kit. Some people want to order components for their Dell. Some people want to just buy an Apple, and that's I'm happy with that. Those are all serving different markets, and I think as people get out there and fly that stuff, they start to develop a better intuition of what can I do. And right now, there's a very limited pool of people that can understand how to function in that environment. So when you build stuff that allow people to function in that environment, it's a great thing about the internet. Anybody can sort of, you know, develop an app. We've got classes over at the Hacker Dojo about app development, and all that infrastructure is in place, and so people can develop that. And who knew that shooting birds at pigs was going to be a big, you know, but that's,
you
can't guess.
One of the opening comments made was, what are we selling? What is our product? And I guess I'd like to maybe bring it back to that, especially for the folks here, because many of these folks are coming in and thinking they need to fund a way to do this competition. And so, you know, that was one thing that's put out, is make sure you understand what are you selling. Is there any other items or advice for them as far as going on, what they should know, what they need to do to help secure their strength and going forward to approach somebody to help with funding?
Well, if I may quickly, there's a great irony in one of the marketing terms is to own a space, right? And then figure out what you're going to do with it. So that's a very relevant term, particularly in this room, right? And if I may just go to that, is to figure out what it is, and what it'll benefit, obviously. And I come to it again. I know you have an immediate captured potential for funds or market people in that limited pool already. But I do think there's a bigger pool, right, that you can reach out to when you figure out what it is.
There's a subtlety in knowing what business you're in. And part of it has to do with what you're actually selling to the person. It's not necessarily just a physical product. It's more of it can be an emotional attachment. It could be something that's not tangible. Organized religions, basically, they sell you, they're saving your soul. Hospitals, medical care, they're saving your life. So there's this visceral attachment. So what is it that we are selling to our particular customers? With the Viking Fund, the Ferdinand and Isabella funds, we had basically a number of things that we were targeting. One was fear. Fear of loss is a big thing. So that the instruments on the moon were turned off in 1974 for one of something like $100,000 a year. And come 76, 1980, with the Viking landers, the same thing was going to happen because of the funding issue. So people were upset. There was the fear of loss of actually getting the data. There was the interest in participating, interest in sort of the sunk cost fallacy of we spent this much money to get the Viking landers on Mars. This is just stupid. So there's a whole bunch of emotional attachments that have nothing to do with the actual data coming back to the person. So what we were selling to these people was involvement. So it's not just the rocket you're selling. It's not just putting a kilogram into orbit. It's like, who are your stakeholders and what are they getting out of this?
Well, I don't understand the segment well enough. My sense is that it'd be hard to make a credible story to someone that there's an ROI on invested.
Well, that's a good thing to know.
A for-profit ROI, right? Because it doesn't seem to me that there are enough proof cases of it, and it's hard to make that claim. So it seems to me that rather than bringing in investors, you're bringing in sponsors. And that's a different thing. And to bring in sponsors, some of them will like the relationship with you, you know, the logos and whatnot, that they might help their business otherwise. Some will be in it only for the excitement of it. So, in my comment before, I really believe, be sure that you're bringing them in to your adventure. Even though you're doing it, and you're the one slaving, and you're here 7 by 24, and they're just writing you a check, right? You gotta make them feel like they're part of it, if you want to get that funding from them. And if you want them to be business sponsors where there's something in it for them, you gotta really think of, okay, in their shoes, what value is there? If this is someone who's providing you parts or machine tools or machine services or whatever it is, be sure that they're getting the right kind of logo position, sponsoring all of they're part of your adventure, your glory shine on them, so they get something out of it, whether it's helping their business or it's emotional. But you gotta bring them in within the tent if you want them to reach into their pockets.
Yeah, I think that is, I agree totally.
I would add that, you know, in a competition, it's sort of tough because you sort of pull together a team, and it can be a team that hasn't worked, you know, together at all. People will ask you, like, oh, well, okay, you guys are doing this, well, who are you? You know, what's your working relationship? And then having a good, strong team is important if you're gonna think, you know, put some money in, you know, behind this group. And sometimes you guys are like, well, we're just together and here's what we're gonna go do. And I think a way of showing the strength of the team is to identify some intermediate milestones where the teams kind of worked on things and produced a deliverable. And so as you think about the challenge and the competition, pencil in those things that can kind of prove out, hey, we can work together as a group, and then demonstrate to everybody, even if you're going to sponsors, you'd like to show, hey, if I put some money behind this venture, who are you guys, and have you guys work together? And you'd like to have a story that says, oh, well, here's why we're together, and here's what we've done in the past, which may not be related to this, but we've had some success. Or since we've come together, here are some of the things that we can do. And that's a game of declaring what is success. Yeah, we tried to do this and we did it. We tried to do that and we did do it. Or or there's some lessons learned. So I think that trying to tell your story about your team can be very, very helpful when it comes to winning over sponsors or investors.
Make it a human story. Apollo 13 would suit you guys well right now, right? Because, you know, there's no doubt some of you may already have it, you know, an app in mind with an ROI potential for investors. There's absolutely no doubt things are going to come along your way as you hadn't even imagined down the track. But right now, if you go to your goals, innovation, opportunity, and communication, right, that needs a pool. And that's about the human story. I might just tell you quickly, if I give you something, if I describe it. I have a client, he's a young guy based in Denver. And some of you may or may not know, there's a very famous motor vehicle race, used to be called the Paris to Dakar. You're familiar with that? It's now run in South America. To participate, just to put your name on the table, costs you $30,000, right? And if you want to take a mechanic, it's like another 30 grand, or euros. Which is about the same, we're changing. But it's a very expensive endeavor, big teams. And this guy, through one channel or another, got hold of me and he said, look, I want to do it. I said, right, how much money you got? Nothing. Do you have a motorcycle? Yeah, I sort of have one. What about a mechanic? Well, I'm looking for a guy. I said, like, do you have any money to even get on this venture? He said, I've got enough to put my name down, but I want to do it. I said, well, how much time do you have? 6 months. How much do you have to raise? You have to raise about $300,000. Right? Well, he said, I said, well, how's it going? He said, well, I've been to all the motor vehicle places. I've been to the tire guys and the oil guys and all. I said, the same place that everyone else is going? He said, yes. He said, how much do you raise? He said, 5 or 6 grand. Right? I think a lot of that was pity raise. You know, have a sticker and that's $100, right? I said, well, you know, if you think about it, really, we spent some time, really what it's turned into now for him, the story we are in fact painting is there's an individual guy who's going to take on the giants, the real big guys, by himself. And who is coming to help him? The mom and pops and the kids who don't even ride motorcycles. They suddenly have got involved And so we've got a whole thing coming out with stories along the lines that every morning, and he'll be going with one other guy, sleeping in a tent, and relaying as far as he can get live using the modern technology, how tough his day is, the night was, and how tough his day is. And suddenly we found that all these people are coming in, they're on motorcyclists, right? And going, look, here's $100, it's crowdfunding. It's starting to come in real fast. And you know, how's your story going? Where are you today? He's building this kind of thing. And I mean, I see that here, I keep coming back to it. Right? You guys are a perfect foundation for a fantastic reality show. Absolutely no doubt about it. Yeah, and who would be watching it? It's not the guys who generate rocket fuel or the investors, they'll be watching for the opportunities that will come out of it later, right? Or even now. But it's the guys watching, how's this team doing? How's Phoenicia doing? And like, oh my goodness, they've all got, you know, the flu, and these guys are, that is that human story to me. And it's a great story. And I think we suck people into it. You know, if I may tell you one more, then I'll get off it. I often talk about, I know a lady, a female, she can write, she's brilliantly creative, unbelievably creative, but she can write, fantastic copy, she can put together, edit video, incredible video footage, she can distribute it almost overnight to hundreds of thousands of people and get a response, and she can do this in a few hours, right? And she can do it virtually on no budget. And I think back in my time, that kind of stuff, 15, 20 years ago, took so much money and time to do. But here's the twist. She's 13 years old and there's 350 million of them. Right? Shifted. And this market is coming in. And as I was saying to Will, you know, just all these schools around here. They're on Facebook, they're doing this and that. Rockets are taking off. Yeah. But they wouldn't be on Facebook, as you well know. We use their cell phones without those things up there. It's that human story. I rest my case on that. If you can get that element going.
So how much did the guy in Denver raise? Did he reach his goal?
No, we're working on it right now. Yeah, it's starting to go like this, right? But we reckon we're going to exceed the goal. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get a ticket myself to go with him. So what has happened is he just shifted that thinking and it's become an adventure for people that want to vicariously ride along with him. And it's like, I'm going to ride along with you guys, and I can't even. I'm not a scientist, I just like that concept.
You look at, you know, you guys are familiar with Kickstarter, here's Kicksat, right? The Kicksat guys out of Cornell have raised 50K. Their original goal was 30K, and so it's, you know, they're now up to, so that they can pay for their own ride. I mean, that's one, the vehicle for, you know, using social media to do the crowdsourcing of funding, but then also, you know, coming up with the right story that gets people engaged. Some people, you know, for 1,000 or 1K, you can buy your little chipset and actually do your own program. I think he sold like 20 of these so far, but it's telling you that there's some market there. It's getting some traction, getting more traction than I bet the Cornell guys expected.
Okay, guys, so if I may, let's do a quick little wrap up from each of you. What your condensed thoughts are that these folks need to concentrate on. Just like a few sentences, please. And then we'll take a break, and I will run off and get lunch, and then we'll get started with the team and vendor presentations. So, yeah, very short.
I love what you guys are doing. I want to share the story of many people as I can to help you guys. Give me the story. What is that adventure in terms of contrast? You guys are the little guys, you're coming up against the big guys. Give me the story, and I'll pass it on. That's it.
I got three. As I've said before, it's not about the challenge, but overall for your industry. Always keep survival in mind. World is littered with the corpses of companies who accurately forecast the future and were dead before the future showed up. Secondly, to help you get there, you are competing with each other and you should push each other and all that, but don't try to kill each other. You know, you should try to be open-minded to opportunities to cooperate as a means to preserve resources and help you all survive. And it helps each individual survive. Watch out for the prisoners and all that. And then lastly, is you think about, you know, what will happen as this moves forward. If you're doing it right, you're going to bring in a lot of new entrants and new talent. And some of it's going to torque you. You're gonna say, wait a minute, where were you back when we were all in this Will's conference room talking about this stuff? And there were 24 of us, and now, 50 new faces showed up. You didn't pay any dues. Remember, that's a more, or at least as important, I'd say a more important resource for your nascent industry as the money is. You want to bring in that new talent, that human resource. So when it shows up, welcome it in. Don't need lots of people, especially after you worked hard to get somewhere. Your natural response is, no, I earned it, you haven't paid your dues, get out of the way. You need that talent in your industry.
I think those are all great comments. I just have one comment which I've always focused on, which is just focus. What is your focus? If you look at Charles Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis, Lindbergh was focused on the absolute minimum requirements for the competition. That was his choice. And in building your group and your team, you can say, what is it that we're trying to do? Focus on your market, focus on the aspect of the competition. Those can be, I want to build a business versus I want to win the competition. Those can be two different choices. But make a decision about what you want to do, and then focus on that. Hopefully that can get you through the lean times, and hopefully you make the right choice.
My take on it is know what business you're in, which really means understand your stakeholders. Understand what the values, the needs, the wants, the goals, and the aspirations of your stakeholders. And stakeholders are essentially everybody. Stakeholders are your employees, your investors, the governments, local, state, federal governments, the other 7 billion people on this planet, everybody.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate this.
Great, thank you.